What's happening, inhabitants of the YouTube machine? Welcome to Dan on Sports, a channel that'll speak to your soul, hopefully, while you're still alive. Well, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Wait, can anybody copyright strike that? Well, I guess we're gonna find out. Anyway, football season's upon us. Now we all pretend we know everything about the sport and that we know more than the coaches, GMs, and analysts. And I'm no different. So I'll be reviewing every division and discuss the offseason moves of each team. Will your team pass? Will they get a glowing review? Well, that depends on whether or not they shit the bed. We're going to start with the ever-competitive AFC North. Drop it. The Ravens are one of those teams that you want to trust as a good team, and then they disappoint you like your dad when your friends got an Xbox for Christmas and you got socks and undies. It's not just me, right? Nevertheless, they will always be in the mix, but they will need the right moves to carry them over the top. This offseason, they sacrificed their defense to improve their offense. Losing edge rushers Yannick Ngakoue and Matt Judon was huge and leaves them a big hole up front. Tyus Bowser and Pernell McPhee are not going to fill that void. Mark Ingram was a plug-and-play back, and that worked well within their system. They'll miss him. Willie Snead is a guy I fool myself into picking up almost every year in fantasy football, and every year I kick myself for doing it. And you do too. He's got talent, but it just never translates consistently on the field. That'll keep him employed, but keep him as a journeyman as well. Not surprised that they let him go. They also lost struggling Matt Skura at center and find a gaping hole in that position. The Ravens did add Sammy Watkins, who will add immediate firepower to the team. Watkins is a strange case of a guy who most teams would love to have, but teams that have him don't keep him. So by the end of his career, most teams might have had him at some point. Probably have his jersey retired in every stadium. They bolstered the O-line by adding Kevin Zeitler and Alejandro Villanueva to the mix. Zeitler, who I'm very familiar with as a Giants fan, is a solid blocker. Villanueva will be tasked with replacing the departed Orlando Brown Jr. In the draft, the Ravens added Rashad Bateman, to go along with Watkins and Hollywood Brown, giving Lamar Jackson a potent receiving core, which also includes Tylan Wallace, who was a fourth-round steal. But that potency is contingent on whether or not they actually open up the offense. With an extra first-round pick, they grabbed Jason Owe to help address the edge rusher void. Will it prove to be a band-aid? Time will tell, as I believe they'll bring him along slowly. Ben Cleveland was drafted and may be starting at guard when the season starts. The Ravens need to make the jump this year. By Ravens, I mean Lamar Jackson. Like I said earlier, the Ravens need to open up the passing game. As much as I like Jackson, he's holding back the passing game and they have to solely rely on RPOs to get the ball down the field. Maybe he's just not the guy. You can trust Baltimore's front office to keep tinkering with the roster though. So do I think they could have done better? Yes. Did they drop the ball? No, not at all. But they will have to eventually recognize if Lamar Jackson's the guy that's going to take them to the promised land or not. So, were they the Bengals or the Bungles this offseason? The team has been cursed since the 90s. Or on the rare times when they were on a roll. Carson Palmer tore his ACL or Vontaze Burfict lost his mind. Subsequently, they lost those games. Are they on the cusp of a turnaround? Joe Burrow looks legit, but just like Palmer, his ACL snapped like my resistance bands the other week. But enough of the bad luck. Let's see if their front office turned that luck around. AJ Green was arguably the best wideout the Bengals ever had. Now he's gone. They also lost deep threat John Ross and released defensive tackle Geno Atkins, who was admittedly on decline anyway. Letting go of William Jackson III and letting him walk in free agency leaves a big hole in their secondary. They also lost Mackenzie Alexander, compounding that issue. Edge rusher Carl Lawson was quite the loss. although his sack total in 2020 was nothing to brag about. Still, even if you don't have a lot of sacks, you can still bring pressure, which he does. The signing of sack machine Trey Hendrickson will mitigate the loss, but the Bengals may have overpaid for him. The signings of Chidobe Awuzie and Mike Milton help cushion the blow from the losses of Jackson and Alexander, and saves a buck or two. The Bengals O-line isn't very good. Some might even say terrible. Tackle Riley Reeve should be a solid addition. In the draft, the Bengals made the fans forget about AJ Green by drafting Burrow's favorite person in the whole world. No, not me, Jamar Chase. They were in position to get a lineman, but went with a weapon instead. Young quarterbacks do need an old world wide receiver. I mean, they also need an offensive tackle that will keep him from getting injured. And Burrow did get injured this year. They did draft Jackson Carman in the second round. Consolation prize? He can succeed in the NFL, most likely on the right side. Remember, the Bengals are in rebuild, which they seem to have been in for the last 100 years. That being considered, this has been a very good offseason for them. They gave Joe Burrow weapons while taking some measures to protect him. And at the end of the day, without protection, you can get burned. So the Bengals did not drop the ball, but that still remains to be seen. I know it used to be a thing to laugh at the Browns regardless of what they did during the offseason, because we know how their season would play out. I mean, they go through more QBs than your wife did in her college days. And you've seen that updated Tim Couch jersey. But if the age of COVID has taught you anything, it's that we're in a new world, my people. People can go to school and work in their underwear. Restaurants could bring food to you, even fast food joints. And the Browns are said to be a good team for a long time. Yeah, I said it. Can't believe I did. And although I'm not as high on Baker Mayfield as a lot of you are, all the pieces around him are phenomenal. The team is absolutely loaded and filled pretty much every hole. Pause. They won't even miss anyone they lost in the offseason. Sheldon Richardson, Kendall Lamb, Kevin Johnson, Terrence Mitchell. Oh well. They get Davian Clowney and DeCaris McKinley to jump in and out of the lineup to go along with Myles Garrett. Quarterbacks will be running for their lives. They improved other aspects of their defense as well. John Johnson will ball out for the secondary. Troy Hill will be a great addition. And all of a sudden, the Browns have a pretty lethal secondary to complement that pass rush. They drafted Greg Newsome, the second, to make that secondary even more lethal. And they got an absolute steal in the second round with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. First person to guess how many takes it took me to say his name wins a prize. The team is stacked. I'm not used to saying this. Who are these Browns? What did they do to our lovable losers? So in summary, the Browns definitely did not drop the ball. Look out for them this year. Okay, now this is a trigger warning. Now, before you think I'm doling out glowing reviews to every team like I'm handing out all A's, we've arrived at the Pittsburgh Steelers. This really is the Twilight Zone. I mean, I'm about to praise the Browns and bash the Steelers. I mean, when you're capped out, you need to be shrewd in your free agency moves and your draft moves. You have to nail both. The Steelers nailed neither. Ben Roethlisberger, who aged 10 years in a 2-year time frame, did them no favors by not retiring, and his arm is cooked like a pierogi in downtown Pittsburgh. They're on the cusp of a rebuild. If their fans don't see that yet, they will by the end of the season. They lost edge rusher Bud Dupree. They also lost Marquise Pouncey, Alejandro Villanueva in division, Matt Fielder, and any other offensive lineman on the planet Earth. They did re-sign declining wide receiver and TikTok enthusiast Juju Smith-Schuster, who was more attracted to logos than a graphic designer. Now, if his production on the field was anywhere near his production on social media, then this would have been a good move. Just focus on shining on a sleeper app and not on TikTok, my guy. Oh, and don't forget to follow my TikTok. Link will be in the description. Speaking of sleeper, the Steelers did draft potential fantasy darling Najee Harris. I know a lot of you will be eyeballing him in your fantasy draft, But remember one thing, no line. No line at all. Don't get me wrong, he's a phenomenal talent, but he won't be winning any fantasy leagues when the opposing front seven is taking turns teeing off on him and meeting him in the backfield. And he won't be getting much help from second round draft pick tight end Pat Freiermuth, who will need to develop his run blocking at the pro level. Remains to be seen. Perhaps he could get some run blocking help from third round draftee Kendrick Green. We'll have to wait and see what he becomes at a pro level. See, when you have a lot of holes on your team and you're pretty much capped out and you don't really address that in free agency or the draft, well, let's just say that Mike Tomlin has his work cut out for him. He's a hell of a coach and he gets a lot out of his teams. But I do see a tough year ahead for them. Really tough. And that's your AFC North. Do you agree with your team's assessment? Steeler fans in particular? Let me know in the comments below. I will be discussing the AFC South next. Tune in and see how your team did. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you like the content. Feel free to hit the bell icon. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and now TikTok, where my old ass tries to see what all the hype is about. Juju. So, until next time, you're dismissed. Peace.